Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The views, opinions, or advice offered by this show's host do not necessarily reflect those of News Talk 780 KOH or its parent company, Cumulus Media. This is Bosma On Business with award-winning entrepreneur Mike Bosma, sponsored by Keystone CPAs. We're getting Northern Nevada back to business.
Good morning, business owners. It's Mike Bosma, your business-savvy CPA, coming to you from the KOH studio. Hey, you Garden Show listeners, you want to hang tight and hang on. Today's installment of Bosma On Business, I'm going to be able to help you monetize that cabbage out there. You know, it's a different kind of cabbage. It's not the cabbage that you buy in the store. It's a little cabbage, a little Benjis, a little greenbacks, kind of put in your wallet and make a buck or two. That's what we do each and every Saturday on Bosma On Business. Today, no different. Today's installment, Bosma On Business, Alex Sonkin, who is the founder of the Due Diligence Project, worked with Alex extensively over the last number of years, and thought he would be a good addition to the show because, if you can assemble hundreds of CPAs to collaborate and coordinate, you must have a superpower. Alex, welcome to Bosma On Business.
Mike, it's a pleasure having me. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
No, my pleasure. Tell me about this Due Diligence Project. What is it?
The Due Diligence Project is it's basically a network of hundreds and hundreds of CPAs that we've been meeting and inviting into our community over the last almost 2 decades. And the purpose of the project is to complete independent peer-reviewed due diligence on hundreds of sophisticated tax strategies. And what we have is CPAs and elite tax attorneys introducing us to their favorite resources, favorite specialists, and then we have hundreds of independent CPA firms who are members of the Due Diligence Project independently ask questions, find out what the weakest part of each strategy is, and either get their questions answered to the level of confidence where they can now, okay, we're going to start bringing these ideas to our most important clients. Or if they don't get their questions answered, if they find the strategy may be too risky, they just put it away and then they never talk about it again. But the goal is to really identify what the highest ROI strategy's net of cost, net of risk is. And the only way to do this is to show each strategy to hundreds and hundreds of independent CPAs who have at least 50,000 hours of experience in audit and tax court. So you can have a meaningful conversation with them and really get their independent viewpoint on if there's risk that we're not seeing, if there's issues, if there's tax code changes that we're not aware of. We want to have all that information come into the center of the hub, the center of the Due Diligence Project, and we share that information with all of the CPAs and all the tax professionals in our community.
Now, there's got to be a way to make a buck on this, Alex. So is this a pay-to-play type of social club or professional club?
Well, absolutely. So our members do pay a membership fee, and really the community protects one another, and you're absolutely right. No one wants to do this work. Due diligence on a tax code that, is there 500,000 pages in the tax code? Is it 1 million pages? Is it 250,000 pages? No one seems to know. Only 18% of Fortune 500 companies zero out their tax returns. And 82% of most profitable companies in the world don't know how to do what 18% of Fortune 500 companies are doing every single year. So what's the disconnect? Why is it that 82% of most profitable companies in the world can't produce a meticulous tax return like 18% are doing every year? They don't know how many pages are in the tax code. They don't know how to complete independent peer-reviewed due diligence on all these different strategies. So we figured out how to monetize it because we're going super wide. We're covering many, many different topics, many different strategies, and we're going super deep because in order for a CPA to get confident in bringing one of these strategies to their billionaire clients, they really have to understand what the weakest part of the strategy is, where the IRS could attack it, and are they willing to sign that tax return. So by really helping our members complete their due diligence in 10 times less, with 10 times less time, with 10 times more confidence, they're able to bring this value to their clients and generate larger value for their clients, and then which equates to larger fees. And this is the key. The key is delivering more value to clients so the CPAs can generate larger fees, and our community shares in those fees with our partners, and that's how we create the value for our CPAs and the business owners who trust those CPAs to bring them into the right kind of planning ideas.
Right. On the phone, Alex Sonkin from the Due Diligence Project, talking about kind of a cohort of sorts that independent CPAs putting their heads together. I'd say, coming out of the very, very large CPA firm environment, spent, the bulk of my career between Grant Thornton and Clifton Larson Allen, and you have that cohort inside that large firm environment. So, what's an independent CPA to do? Well, they sign up for the Due Diligence Project and get smart about stuff, and I think what I found, Alex, is some people, lean on the work that you're doing. Other people, do their own independent research, and it's kind of a mixed bag on outcomes. What are some of the fun things you guys have come up as in this cohort?
Well, what's amazing is we built this incredible community of, I like to endearingly call us tax geeks, and I think it's a really cool term, and I consider myself a tax geek as well. And when you put a lot of elite CPAs and a lot of elite tax attorneys together, the magic is really in the conversations, outside of the presentation, the Q&A, really, really going deep. And I just don't think the world has a facility like that. We started doing these events, 20 years ago, live events. Now we do everything virtually, but the magic is still being able to put elite CPAs and elite attorneys or elite specialists on the phone together and really hear how the questions and answer sessions are handled, how those questions are answered. So we capture all of that data and we share that with our members. And so we're really a community that polices each other, makes sure that bad players, bad strategies don't get into our community. And every CPA wants to make sure that they're not embarrassed in front of their biggest clients. And in order to do that, they're going to be communicating with every other CPA in the community and all the specialists in the community, ranking and rating all these strategies. So this is a process that never stops. And of course, we're very blessed to have you as part of our community with your background. We have, more than 10 other elite CPAs who've been partners in the Big Four, Price Waterhouse, Anderson, all the big names, over the last few decades. So they've left their big firms, they've joined smaller firms, they joined the Due Diligence Project because it's really a facility for them. Because the big firms, what we found is the big firms don't do the due diligence the way we do, and they're not part of an independent peer review community. If you're a big CPA in one of these Big Four firms, there's thousands of CPAs in that firm. They're all W-2 employees. And if there's a due diligence question in that company, maybe there's CPAs in that company that have questions or issues with that. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to call out their managing partners and say, I think there's risk in this strategy. Don't do this. Or maybe we need to reconsider this new strategy. So in our community, because we're all independent, we're not worried about stepping on each other's toes. We're able to find some really, really sexy strategies that help eliminate 99% of the tax on the sale of an appreciated asset and put that money in a structure that goes in a 1% tax bracket. We have other structures where we can put clients in a 13% tax bracket. And you start looking at how is this possible? How is this legal? We go right into the tax code. We have hundreds of CPA firms, law firms go right into the tax code. They go identify all the code sections. And they say, are we violating or are we even stepping into the gray area of anything with these 3-4 sections of the tax code? And if we're not, if our network of CPA firms and law firms look at this and go, no, this is fully legal, fully supported. Here's what the history is of the tax code. Here's what happened in audit with some structures that are similar to this. Here's what's happened in tax court. We can, we aggregate all that information. And then we just say, look, the law is behind us. We can do this. In order for them to stop this strategy, they're going to have to lobby Congress and have new laws, new regulations passed before this strategy even is close to going in the gray area. And that's how we get the goodies. That's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's what we do.
No, I got you. And so that's, as I mentioned, Alex Sonkin from the Due Diligence Project, talking about the CPA cohort that, I collaborate with. And, it's been good. I'm working with dozens and dozens of CPAs across the country and seeing how different people do things. And, if there's, of course, I'm always from a perspective, if there's a better way to do something, I'm all over it. So and maybe just kind of, let's go down the list a little bit, Alex. We got a little bit of time and talk about some of those. Because, I know back in the day, conservation easements were all the rage, right? So it's, okay, you can, so talk to me about what a conservation easement and kind of what the current status of it is.
Yeah. So the current status of conservation easements is they passed a law that says you really can't do conservation easements unless your own family office doing a private conservation easement for your own land. You can't not take any, you can't take on investors and offer them opportunities to get a 5-to-1 or 4-to-1 write-off anymore. So what happened in that space is Congress was lobbied. They passed new laws. They agreed to those laws. Whether those laws are fair or not, they're on the books. And now conservation easements are essentially illegal the way it was done before.
Right. So for the benefit of our listeners, kind of how this works. Let's say, for example, this happened all the time. I'm a developer. And so I have a bunch of common area space that's, and think, natural habitat type stuff. So it's in the middle of development. It's walking area. It's an amenity of the development. Well, putting that into a trust that says, hey, we're never going to develop this land, there is a wrinkle in the tax code that allows you to get a charitable deduction for that. Well, but what, smart people did is they said, well, hey, what is this land worth? It's, the lot adjacent to it sold for $400,000 for a half-acre lot. This must be worth tons of money. And so people would invest. They basically invest $1,000, and then they get a $10,000 deduction. And so, they invest $1,000, $10,000 deduction, you had some $3,700. It's 3 to 4 to 1. Hey, this is a no-brainer for everybody, right? The developer gets paid. The only people that are paying is Uncle Sam. And then in that one, then you're absolutely right, Alex. What Congress did and the IRS did is said, hey, we don't like this. So if you have a multiple of this or more, then you need to disclose it as a potentially transaction of interest. And then nobody wants to ever disclose. So they're like, if I have to disclose it, if I don't disclose it, I have big penalties. Then that shut it down. So you're gonna have to tell the IRS about this thing, and that's how it goes. So and that's how these things trend, right? Where it's just like, okay, we found a wrinkle, and I think the Honorable Judge Learned Hand said this: we are under no compulsion to pay more taxes than we ought. We have no patriotic duty to pay more taxes than we should. And so it's just, it's not for us to fill the coffers of the government. It's up for us to be able to maintain your wealth. And so we do that by putting smart people around a table and figuring out things to do. And to Alex's point, sometimes there's things that are untested or untried. And we tell our clients, hey, this, IRS is probably not going to like this, but we think you're entitled to a deduction. And so I think those are some of the things that, depending on where you are on the risk profile, if you're a person out there, and if you got a letter from Uncle Sam, if you got a letter from the IRS, if you would pass out, that strategy is probably not for you. But if you're saying, hey, I want to do everything that's legal and push the boundaries, and okay, we have some of that too. So it's a continuum as far as what you want to do. But one of the things that I found, Alex, is just fascinating to me, is that when many CPAs that they do a good job of diving deep into the complicated stuff, but sometimes they miss the easy stuff. So let's do this. I got Alex Sonkin on the phone. When we come back, we're going to say the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of making sure that you get the low-hanging fruit when it comes to tax deductions. We call it Bosma On Business. News Talk 780 KOH.
Named one of the best personal finance podcasts, The Stacking Benjamin Show with Joe and his friends makes financial literacy fun.
Work hard and save your money. That way, when you're old like me, you can buy the things that only young people can enjoy.
Squirrel watching.
You heard it here first. Get yourself a squirrel cam, spend $30 a month on nuts, and you'll be at early retirement before you know it.
No, Piggy, this is the road to a podcast nobody listens to.
Find out more by searching The Stacking Benjamins podcast, wherever you listen.
Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. On the phone, Alex Sonkin from the Due Diligence Project, talking about the 1, 2, 3s and ABCs of really being smart about tax planning. And, I think one of the things that is important for our listeners to hear is that just because somebody has an idea doesn't mean it necessarily works. And so, one of the things that I've, and we'll talk to it on the next segment about some of the audit work I'm doing right now with Internal Revenue Service. But one of the things that if your CPA or enrolled agent or tax attorney is saying, hey, I have an idea, then just tell them, hey, just show me where the tax opinion is that makes this okay, or show me the research that makes it okay. Just, show me. And a lot of times, like what I'll do is the Tax Advisor is a tax publication that, is put out by the American Institute of CPAs, and it'll, they'll have guest authors in there, but they'll talk about pretty much everything, right? So, and I think, just Google, Tax Advisor, and then search that database for whatever they're pitching, and they'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and that's where I think a lot of times people get sideways because they'll take their advisor's word for something, and in fact I found this, Alex, to be really true with the Employee Retention Tax Credit, where there's CPAs and everybody else on the planet pitching this stuff. I'll take a percentage of the fee that the IRS absolutely hates, and now they're auditing them all. In there, and like I had two clients that did employee retention tax credit. We didn't do the credits. They had one of these promoters do them, and when I found, but we did the math. So they looked at, you don't qualify. You do not qualify for this credit. And then they're like, and then somebody would call, hey, if you don't, you don't have to pay if you don't get a credit. And then they write them a check for a couple $100,000 as a contingent fee. And now they're all getting audited. And so I had a fiduciary duty to tell both those clients is that there's an amnesty program. You could send the money back and keep a percentage of it. So you don't have to send it all back, no penalties, just a little interest. And you're ahead on it, and then you have no risk. The problem is everybody spent the money, right? So they're like, we don't have the money anymore. Well, then get a loan. Because, if the IRS is going to figure this out, they're auditing these like all day, every day right now. Those 80,000 auditors are alive and well out there. And so I told them both, and I said, I will reach out to both of those people that did those credit claims, and I will ask them for the memo that says that it works. And guess what? One of them's not even in business anymore, right? They folded up shop and it's gone. And I told you, you have an obligation to repay that money because I don't believe you qualify. If I've never hoped more, Alex, that I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. So, but it's like, hey, and people are keeping their fingers crossed. And unfortunately, for the last 20 years, nobody's ever been audited, so people don't think audits are real. Well, guess what? They're real. And the IRS now is they put a lot of money into their technology, so now that they could basically find people that need to be audited. They're easy to find, and bing, bing, bing. They light them up like a Christmas tree.
You're preaching to the choir, Mike. There's so many problems out there. I created. God showed me to build a due diligence project. It's like Noah, build the ark, build the due diligence project. Why? Because people make bad decisions for a million reasons. People get emotional. They make bad decisions. People don't have access to information. They don't know how many pages are in the tax code. They don't know which group to use, which specialist to use. Now, you mentioned specialists that were doing all this business. They closed up shop. In order for us to recommend a specialist, they have to go through an arduous due diligence process that essentially satisfies hundreds and hundreds of CPAs. Now, they can't satisfy hundreds and hundreds of CPAs right off the bat, but we have multiple levels of due diligence before we even introduce that that specialist to the community. Because if we introduce a specialist to our community that closed up shop like that, right, then we're done.
We're done, right? You lose all credibility, right? Yeah, no, that's it.
So this is, at the end of the day, all we're doing, it's like, it reminds me, my wife and I enjoy watching shows and movies on Netflix. We're getting older, right? We don't go out to clubs anymore. We're old people. And back in the day, we used to go to Blockbuster to rent movies. A lot of people listening to this may not even remember there was something called Blockbuster before Netflix and Amazon, all these things. And you'd go to Blockbuster and you look at the covers of the movies and you flip them over, you read the back, read a little description. You still have no idea if it's a good movie or not, so you ask the guy behind the counter, hey, do you think this is a good movie for my wife and I to enjoy? That's how due diligence is done today. It's archaic. Versus Netflix and Amazon, they already know which movies and shows my wife and I are going to like. I just pick the ones that are 98, 99 percentile, 95 percentile. I'm like, they know better than I do.
Right.
I am not a great decision maker when it comes to movies, and certainly my wife is not that great either. Picking all these rom-coms and all this stuff. But guess who knows? Netflix knows. Amazon Prime knows because of their independent peer review. So this is really what we've done with sophisticated tax planning. And in order, our audience has to be tax geeks who know the tax code, who know how, who sign tax returns. And no one else has done this before. And this is how we eliminate risk in this deep, dark world of sophisticated tax planning, with where you don't really know which specialist is good, which specialist is bad, which specialist is going to be in business next year or not. We exist to eliminate as much of that risk as possible.
Right. No, and I think that's where that healthy tension, right? Of like, okay, well, show me why this isn't complete poppycock.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll walk them through it, right? So then, people are able to say, okay, that there's various levels of authority in the Internal Revenue Code, but the minimum level of authority to be able to sign a tax return is called substantial authority, which is, hey, there's more like, there's enough to support a deduction. And to take a position, sign a tax return. So it's just knowing the difference in that, but that doesn't mean the IRS is going to sign off on it, and that's more likely than not. No, they'll be able to get there. So it's just different layers of authority. There's, and a lot of times these.
Mike,
go ahead,
the reality is, if I was the IRS, I would have my agents sign up for the due diligence project to become members of the due diligence project. We would have to charge them a completely different fee structure there, right? Yeah. Because we're not going to monetize those, but we could show them what we're doing.
Right.
We could show them, here's what the tax code says, here's what the law is. Here's here's the strategies you can attack, and here's the strategies you can't attack unless you lobby Congress and change the law.
Change the rules, right. No, that's exactly right.
Because IRS agents, they don't know the tax code either. It's a monstrous. I mean, for those of you who hear about tax planning and hear about the tax code, some of you have never actually read the tax code and don't appreciate what Mike and I are even talking about. Go Google the U.S. tax code and just start reading it. And try to make some sense of this thing. And then just realize that this is why you don't want to do your own tax planning.
Right. Well,
you need to have a team of professionals on this thing, because no one person understands this. No one person can get through 10% of the tax code, let alone the whole thing.
Right. No, that's it. You need this cohort. You need this collaborative. Well, yeah, it's fascinating, right? I'll just share with you an example, Alex. So I had a friend, one of my best friends, and I'm talking, I'm helping him, understand why it makes sense for him to buy a business. So, and he goes out and kind of makes a mistake. He reaches out to a business broker without me reaching out to the business broker. That means I don't get a commission on a referral. So, and I'm like, that's okay. It's all, it's all good. But I said, I'm going to have to charge you a fee to help you buy this company. And he was like, well, how much is that fee? I was like, $50,000, and that's the friends and family rate, and he's like, oh, I can't afford that. I'm like, oh, okay. You do you, brother. Fine. Well, I remember sitting around the fire pit, Alex, and having a glass of wine, and he says, oh yeah, I bought the stock of this business. I go, you bought the stock? He goes, well, yeah, I had to, because it was a contractor's license, and I needed to otherwise I wouldn't get the contractor's license. I said, well, so I had to buy the stock. That's what they told me. I'm like, well, who told you that? Well, the business broker who's not licensed to do any of this. And I go, well, who represented you? He says, I represented myself. I said, you have a fool for a client. So I did the math. I go, Eric, that is costing you $123,000 a year lost taxes the way you did this deal. So now we're in the process of $2 million. $2 million, Alex. $2 million bucks. He screwed up this deal by representing himself. It was the best $50,000 he could have ever spent. Because so now we're in the process of doing a late 338H10 election. Right? It's probably going to cost him $100 by the time it's all done. Because we got to now go back to going to have to go back to the seller and say, hey, we need to reimagine this transaction. And we'll make you whole on the downstroke for you, but there should have been this 338H10 election. So talk about nerding out, Alex. Okay, I guess I just did.
Okay. Nerding out. I mean, I see stuff all the time where people bring me opportunities where some other advisor or some other group already meddled in it and charged some ridiculous fee for, and then the service they provided for that fee, we're looking at going, this is like malpractice.
Well, I'm telling you, contact your malpractice. Okay, we call it Bosma On Business. News Talk 780, KOH. Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, on the phone. Alex Sonkin from the Due Diligence Project, talking about some of the more nuanced portions of the tax code, and Alex's Due Diligence Project, putting hundreds of CPAs and enrolled agents together, trying to come up with all the best ideas to save a buck or two in tax land. Of course, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you know that I'm fond of saying all tax planning is really financial planning. Most tax deductions are merely tax deferrals. One of the things that I'm working a lot with Alex right now is something that's a permanent deferral of gains. So a lot of times when you sell your business, and I'll walk you through this real quick, but sell your business, and a lot of times it's at that inflection point in your life. You're like, hey, I could do something kind of cool for charity in this moment, and we can structure that to make that magic happen, so that gain is pointed at the charity rather than you individually. Now, of course, you can't put the wrong kind of gain in a charity, like Section 1245 recapture. That's ordinary income. Then they're going to pay tax on it. All that charities aren't going to take that kind of income, but capital gains income, no problemo, right? And so it gets, and I'll explain it this way. So think if you had Bitcoin, especially now with what Bitcoin's trading at, and let's say you're a charitable person and you would really like to give to charity. So you sell the Bitcoin, sell one Bitcoin, 65,000, just give the cash. Well, you're going to pay 23.8% of top marginal bracket plus state on the gain on that Bitcoin, and then you're going to sell, and then you give it to charity. That you're going to get you'll get a deduction for it, and you'll get it at the potentially top marginal rate of 37%. But you can actually still get the deduction if you just give the Bitcoin to charity. And and so that's where you're like, oh, I'll just give you the Bitcoin. I'll transfer the Bitcoin. It's all good. And that way you don't get the gain, and then you still get the charitable deduction. It is limited to 30% of your adjusted gross income. So, and then there's valuation requirements, and it's actually very, very heavy, let's put it that way, Alex, in following the rules, making sure the rules are followed. And there's a certain charitable structure out there is currently being audited. But of course I'm excited about that, Alex, because as we're defending these audits, that were signed by other CPAs, but I'm like the subject matter expert on it. It's like, no, this is exactly why you're entitled to the deduction. And so, and helping IRS agents understand that, and being able to say, hey, here's the memo, here's the tax opinion, this is why this works, why it's golden. And and I'm curious on your side, Alex, how are you managing that now that these are being audited, at least for the 2021 tax year? What are we doing for 23 and 24?
Yeah, no, we're obviously looking at the audits. We're looking at, are there any surprises that we're seeing? We're relying on your feedback on the ones that you're managing, and ultimately, we've seen this before. We've seen the law firms we worked with sat down with the IRS, and the reason we're confident is because we've shown the IRS how this structure works and over a series of meetings, and then got their feedback on it. Basically, they didn't tell us to do anything differently. They didn't tell our law firms to modify any of it.
Right.
So the fact that there's 85,000 new agents, and they had in 2021, they basically said, hey, any high income, high deductions, we're going to just audit automatically and find out what the heck everyone's doing. We're excited to educate these 80,000 new agents about how this particular program works and why the IRS looked at it in the past and why they didn't need us to change anything.
Right. And I guess to add to that, Alex, and when the IRS's remedy is if they're looking at a transaction and you're doing it wrong, if it's facially wrong, then they'll send you in a second a cease and desist, like saying stop it, right, or else we're going to throw the book at you. So, they're like, they had visibility into this structure. They looked at it. They didn't send the cease and desist. I think now they're just making sure that. Actually, people are, actually doing the structure as designed. Like, okay, they're really giving money to charity every year. That they're paying interest if they borrow the money out. That you're actually doing it. That there's real metrics on it.
What's really cool is, obviously the IRS doesn't really understand what the structure is. They haven't looked at the operating agreement. They don't know that there's real charities involved. They're just assuming, hey, maybe some of these people are doing something that's just avoiding taxes without doing something the right way. The good news, we're benefiting charities. We have charities now that have well over $150 million of gift and counting. We have charities now where our community of CPAs and their donors is now supporting probably close to 60 families with very sick children that would otherwise can't afford to go to work. Their children can't afford to go to the hospital. Now they apply to one of these charities that we're supporting. The charity pays their bills, and this is all coming because of one of these charitable structures. So our donors and our CPAs and myself, we feel amazing about the charities that are getting the benefits of this program, because otherwise, their other fundraising is just begging people for money.
Right.
And here there's a way to partner with donors who are selling appreciated assets, who are very, very wealthy, who found a very creative way to be charitable. And now, because of that, us and the CPAs that are kind of designing these structures with the law firms, we're benefiting charities that would not be able to do what they're doing today without the work that we're doing. So that really, really feels amazing, especially, when we hear stories about, 16-year-old girl who just passed away, and the last 6 months of her life, she was able to she's able to have the best 6 months of her life or the last 6 months of her life because this charity was able to really benefit this family and do very, very special things with the proceeds of the program.
Right. And
that really,
we don't want to lose that, right? Because that's where if there's real dollars going to real charities it has facially real economic impact. I mean, there's substantial economic detriment to making a gift. Yeah, I forever have given away this gift. It's the charities. They get it, and they get this cash flow, and it's great, right? So it's just, but that's where it has been fascinating to now meet dozens and dozens of different CPAs, help them navigate this thing, and that's where I think it's called synergy, right? Well, together we're stronger than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's like, no, we can kind of put our heads together and get a bunch of smart people, and we all get a little bit smarter.
Mike, look, there are some really smart people that put the tax code together. They put every word in there for a reason. They put all of the strategies and opportunities in there for a reason. If they didn't want our donors to be donating money to charity this way, they would not put that in the tax code. It's there because it's obviously something that the IRS cared about. They want avenues for business owners and people who are making money, who have tax events, to be able to bless charities. And that's, we just pulled it right out of the tax code, right? It's just black and white right in there.
Right. Well, and I think that's where being able to, there's code section 7701, letter O, that says that they put in there because people are going crazy on tax planning that say, hey, if whatever it looks like, if it doesn't have any substantial economic merit to it, if it's just a fiction, then we're just going to blow it up and there's a 40% penalty on it. So that's where it's like, there's that underlying tension to say, no, everything we do has to have real economics behind it. And I think those are things where as we're going through this, I think it's important that listeners, if you're out there and you're doing tax planning and it doesn't have any real economic anything, right? Then pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So you just
and that's one of the reasons we work with the CPAs. We don't work directly with the end users of the CPAs, the billionaires that sent them multi-million. We work through those CPAs, and we make sure that we don't bring in ultra aggressive business owners into these structures who are going to do things that are risky, that are going to push these things into gray areas. We're working with, we're working with those CPAs, and they're identifying clients who are doing the right things, who aren't cheating on their taxes, and bringing them really clean ideas to make their businesses even greater, to have more for the community, to do things legally. So we don't go directly to the end user, because a lot of these end users, they take these strategies and they may go and they may push things into the gray area, and we don't want to see that. The IRS doesn't want to see that, and the CPAs don't want to see that.
Right, yeah. So you don't want to be associated with something that doesn't work. It's just right. You never want to be that guy. No, I got you. So, I think
people follow the rules.
Yeah, we follow the rules, right? It's like we just happen to know the rules better than anybody else. So that's I think, a competitive advantage, right? Right. So the rules better than anybody else. It's like, okay, I know how to work the system. And I think that's where a lot of people, like I was talking about my friend who didn't navigate the purchase of his business correctly, cost him a couple $1 million that we're currently fixing, but it's going to be expensive to fix. And we could have got that done, on the fly. Any other low-hanging fruit out there, Alex, that you see people miss a lot?
We have so many strategies, Mike. I'm not going to go on your show and just give you our whole list.
Just give me the list, Alex.
We have so many good, what's crazy? Our community, we have 3 strategies that we haven't even brought to our community of CPAs because they're kind of similar to other strategies and they kind of overlap. And we don't want to inundate our community of CPAs with too many ideas. But I'll give you some of the stuff that we're doing. We partner with the leading insurance company out there that was identified not just by us, but by CLA, by Amazon, by FedEx, as the leading insurance company. It's an alternative to buying traditional insurance, and it's an alternative to setting up your own insurance company and trying to recreate the wheel and run your own insurance company. So our business owners can partner with an insurance company, and if they don't eat up all the premiums with claims, the insurance company returns a portion of their premiums to allow them to use those premiums in the following year. So they've eliminated all these broker fees and broker commissions and all this administration and really built a very clean, efficient insurance company that has all the same relationships that all the traditional insurance companies, but you don't have to run your own captive. So we're able to reduce business owners' insurance costs, health insurance costs, by 20 to 60%, depending on how healthy their employees are. Just a cost reduction strategy.
Right.
We have another group that comes in and they evaluate 9 different areas where business owners are overspending, and they come in and they find money, reduce those expenses, reduce those costs, and take a small percentage of the new money that they found. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of very interesting, non-captive alternatives where we can instead of setting up a captive, we can finance a premium, send it to a third-party insurance company, and have a large tax deduction as just a business insurance cost deduction.
Right.
So instead of setting up a captive and having to justify to the IRS, why do you own an insurance company? Are you big enough to own an insurance company? Are you really transferring risk? Here's a strategy where you truly transfer risk to a third-party insurance company, and basically there's for $540,000 of deductions, there's $100,000 out of pocket.
Right.
I mentioned earlier, we have a very unique strategy where we can put clients in a 13% tax bracket using Section 980 and 704B of the tax code in combination. Does the IRS like that strategy? I don't think they do. But are they going to have to, lobby Congress to pass new laws to stop that from happening? Absolutely. It's right all in the black and white. So we've taken this up to the top law firms, to top CPA firms, said, is there anything wrong with this strategy? Nope. We've had a number of them audited. No change. So,
right. We're on a hard break. When we come back, Alex Sonkin's going to give us a number one thing you need to know before you sign that tax return. It's Bosma On Business, News Talk 780 KOH.
Our house is a mess. Come on in. I'm Amber Wallen, internet comedian and host of your new favorite podcast, Fly on the Wall.
Okay, that's pretty presumptuous to assume that this is going to be their favorite podcast, by the way.
Anyway, that wasp that you just heard interrupt me is my husband.
And co-host, Benjamin Wallen.
Listen in as we discuss relationships and keeping our sweet baby kid alive.
Fly on the Wallen, wherever you listen.
Medical emergencies can strike anywhere. With Fly You Home membership from Air Medcare Network, you can recover close to family and loved ones. Fly You Home can transport you to the hospital of your choice in a medically equipped private aircraft. You won't pay a dime out of pocket. Cover everyone in your home for as little as $159 a year. Take control of your care with Fly You Home membership from Air Medcare Network. Learn more and get started at airmedcarenetwork.com.
Welcome back to Bosma On Business, your host, Mike Bosma. If you need some help on some of these more heady issues that we were talking about this last segment, 775-786-4900 or mbosma@keystone.cpa. We can make that magic happen, but we're getting busy, so sooner is better. Don't wait till April 15th because probably going to be too busy to take that call on that day, but we can get you taken care of now. Anyway, so I was on the phone, Alex Sonkin from the Due Diligence Project. Alex, you've seen probably hundreds, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of different CPAs, preparers, tax positions, tax planning. So if you had to leave our listeners with the number one thing, the big aha, the big takeaway, what would you say before you take a deduction? What do you need to ask that preparer?
I would have your CPA find the Due Diligence Project, reach out to us, and join our network. And this way, your CPA is plugged into the largest independent peer review network of tax geeks in the world. And they will be able to work with other elite CPAs who have billionaire, centimillionaire, multimillionaire clients. They'll be able to work with all the top specialists, all the top tax attorneys in the country. We will share with them all the notes, all the high-level notes on every single strategy that's out there. And this way, when you have a question, when someone shows you an idea, you bring it to your CPA brings it to in our community. They look at that strategy. They look at our community. They confer with all the resources and all the other members of the community, and they can identify if that strategy is good or not, or design a plan for you, maybe using 2, 3, 4 different strategies, or identify one strategy that pencils out the best to put you in the best possible situation. So CPAs have trouble to know how many pages are in the tax code. It's difficult for them to identify the very, very best strategy. So the Due Diligence Project is just an independent peer review community for them to work inside of that basically reduces their time and increases their confidence by a factor of 10.
Okay. No, I got you. And I think, what I'd say is if, when you're talking to your CPA about tax planning, just ask them to show you the memo, show you the tax advisor article, whatever. Like, how does this work? And because ultimately you as a taxpayer are signing that tax return, and you don't need to be able to necessarily understand all the ins and outs, but you should be able to logically understand this is what why the IRS says this is okay. Okay. And if they can't do that, then I would just say get a second opinion, because I've just seen a lot of people go down a poor path. You can always reach out to Alex at Due Diligence Project, but we're a lot of CPAs, right? They're not going to go down there. They're like, I'm smart. I can do this. And I just see people make a lot of mistakes that way. I just, and it makes me sad because I'm passionate about business owners and their success. If you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know that, we're just trying to help business owners, get along and figure this stuff out. And last thing you want is to, walk themselves into a mess. But anyway, so thank you so much.
We're trying to support all the elite CPAs who are doing their very best to support these business owners. But the IRS has got them spread so thin with all of these deadlines, with constantly changing tax code. And they're stretched so thin that they don't even have time to do due diligence and to do proactive tax planning. Our group helps create that time for the CPAs, helps them monetize that, and helps them actually, focus on bringing incredible value to their biggest clients. And that's really the key to our success.
No, thank you very, very much, Alex. In fact, what I'd say is, for like this show, and I'm really excited about next week's show. I'm always excited about every show, but next week as well, I've got Mike Slinkert. He owns a company called Human Energy Concealment, or HEX, and it's really, really cool technology, and kind of his way to bring that to market, I think, is going to resonate with our audience. Of course, as I mentioned, if you need some help, 775-786-4900, M. Bosma at Keystone CPA. Until then, you business owners, you keep that business engine humming. We call it Bosma On Business. News Talk 780, KOH.
The Rolling Stone Music Now podcast gets inside the biggest stories with Rolling Stone senior writer Brian Hyatt.
Now here is my conversation with Jacob Knoll. Your story is an amazing one, and obviously you lost your dad when you were only 1 year old.
It was definitely a screwy way to grow up. I think that a lot of people never heard of who I am, and then they see me joining this band, and they must think this kid must have just been handed everything, or nepotism kid. It's a gift that I have an opportunity to sing in such a big band like my father and my uncle's band, Sublime.
Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you listen.